Welcome to Tane Politic, and today we will be covering something that happened quite recently, the impeachment process and, in the end, the acquittal of the former president, Donald John Trump. And as you all know, Trump was acquitted. That wasn't a surprise. But what was a surprise was the fact that this was the most bipartisan impeachment in history. Let's first look at the votes. I have colored in all the Democratic senators, the 50 of the 48 of them, in green. Now I will also add the two independents caucusing with the Democrats, Angus King of Maine and Bernie Sanders of Vermont. They are treated like members of the Democratic Party, and they voted to convict as well. Now we can take a look at the 7 Republicans that voted to convict the 45th and former president of the United States, Donald John Trump. As some of you might know, an impeachment requires a 2/3 majority to convict, which in the United States Senate is exactly 66.6 votes. So 67 votes are required to convict any high official of impeachment charges. So I've colored in the independents slightly lighter to make it simple. Let's get started with the simplest of all, Senator Susan Collins of Maine. Susan Collins, after winning re-election in 2026, and now that Trump is gone, wants to build back her reputation as an independent. And plus, if she didn't vote to impeach him after what all he did, she's an independent. The Mainers gave her one more chance in 2020 when they re-elected her to the United States Senate. Everyone expected Sarah Gideon, the Speaker of the Maine House, to win, but she didn't. And now Susan Collins is fulfilling her promise to the voters. And, being the most moderate or most liberal member, as someone eloquently put it, of the Republican Party is no easy task. And sometimes, especially when the president is trying to subvert democracy and the Constitution, it involves you trying to stop him, which is why it makes sense that she voted to convict. As you can see, I made it a lighter shade. Another interesting senator is of Alaska, Senator Lisa Murkowski. I'm going in order of ideology, but I'm not going to go straight to her yet. I'm going to double back to her after. Now, an interesting senator is Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. He's a fiscal hawk. He's quite conservative in social policy, but he's popular in Pennsylvania. Why did he vote for it? Well, he won't face any political consequences. Sure, the Pennsylvania GOP can tell him it's wrong and censure him, but it doesn't make a difference to him because Pat Toomey is retiring come 2022. This is his last 2 years in office as a United States Senator. And most of us think that he just wants to build a legacy and he wants to do the right thing. That's why it made sense when Pat Toomey voted that the trial was constitutional, or both of the times, and he also voted to impeach the former president. 52 votes. Now, heading next, we will travel to the state of North Carolina. So, all in all, there are 7 senators: Susan Collins of Maine, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, and Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. So those are the first 5. The first 5 were Lisa Murkowski, Alaska, Mitt Romney of Utah, Ben Sasse of Nebraska, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, Susan Collins of Maine, and now, after that, they got another senator in the club, Will Cassidy of Louisiana, and then, finally in the big vote, Richard Burr of North Carolina. So let's go in that order. So now we have Lisa Murkowski, Alaska. Let's just go back to her because hers is a very interesting case. That's why I avoided it at first. Lisa Murkowski is a political independent. She truly has no allegiance to the party, and in a good way. She does what she believes is right. The first time Trump impeachment, she stood up for him, just like Susan Collins of Maine. In fact, the only time then who voted to convict the president, and that was only out of one of the two charges, Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. But now, back to Lisa. Lisa was the son of Alaska's former governor, Frank Murkowski, and she's independent. In 2010, she lost the primary for the state for not being conservative enough. And then she decided to start a write-in campaign. Across the state of Alaska, she and her staff campaigned, and they managed to win the United States Senate election in Alaska as an independent, and then she went back to the Republican Party victorious and caucused with them. So that's her story. Her only problem in the campaign? Her last name. Voters struggled to spell it in Alaska. But she is, like Susan Collins, a moderate. She is more conservative than Susan Collins, but for example, in the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, Susan Collins supported the nomination even after allegations of sexual assault and abuse. Lisa Murkowski didn't. After a group of lawyers from her state came to talk to her, she decided to change her vote. Now here's one that is truly one of my favorites. Senator Mitt Romney of Utah is extremely conservative. I am extremely progressive, as I like to think of it. But truly, just like John McCain of Arizona, I really admire the senator. His eloquent speech after during the electoral certification process, right after the protesters stormed it, and even before, he made waves as a conservative who stood up to the president. And it's no surprise that he would do this. He criticized the president immediately after the riot, just like Collins and Murkowski. Ben Sasse in Nebraska did it too. Other senators weren't so quick in doing so, but yeah. And now we have Lisa Murkowski, Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, Mitt Romney of Utah. These were 4 of the original 5 who voted that the trial was constitutional in the first vote by the surprise vote by Senator Rand Paul, the junior senator from the state of Kentucky, where the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is also from. And now we head over to Nebraska. And there is Ben Sasse. As the New York Times eloquently put it, Mitt Romney is trying to do the right thing, so in his legacy people will know that he stood up against Trump. Ben Sasse is trying to be the leader of the Republican Party after Trump. Extremely conservative, anti-abortion, and most of the gun rights, also that. But one thing he said when he was elected to the U.S. Senate for Nebraska, he said in 2015 in one of his first speeches in the Senate floor, he said that I will stand up to the president if he or she uses too much of their power or something similar. He made it clear to point out that unlike some Republicans, he believed that all Republicans until 2016 believed that the president shouldn't have much power, but even after 2016, he stuck with that promise. And he told Nebraskans that when something's wrong, I will do the right thing, and that's what he did. After the president created an insurrection to try and subvert the fair and free, transparent transition process, Ben Sasse voted to convict him. And I guess that was expected of him after his blistering comments of the president. Now, those are the original 5 who made the vote in Senator Rand Paul's surprise motion. But now, along the way, when the impeachment trial first started, a little way in, there's another vote. The Democratic House impeachment managers, especially Jamie Raskin and Joe Neguse, were extremely successful. They convinced, out of the state of Louisiana, the Senator Bill Cassidy. I think he's the junior senator, probably. He beat Mary Landrieu in 2014, the year the Democrats lost the Senate. And he voted to convict because, as he said, the argument, if you were an impartial juror and you listened to the arguments of both sides, it was clear which one made more sense, and he voted to continue with the trial. And then, finally, in the final vote, the key vote, we all guessed and suspected that there's no way Republicans would vote to convict the president. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, Ted Cruz of Texas, John Cornyn of Texas, Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, so many, Marshall Blackburn of Tennessee, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, Thom Tillis, John Barrasso, so many senators were so quick to offer a defense. We thought Mitch McConnell might vote to convict, but other than that, we didn't have that much surprises. A vast majority of the Republican caucus, extremely unlikely we'd get to 17. If this was the 2008 Senate, where the Democrats had 60 seats, it would still be possible, but unlikely. It's like that because even if the Democrats they got 5, they got 7 in the final vote, but if they'd convinced, let's say, both senators from North Carolina, shall we? Let's try it out. Let's try. So Richard Burr and Thom Tillis to convict. They convict Mitch McConnell to convict. If they convince, perhaps, Chuck Grassley, Iowa, to convict. They convinced Rob Portman to convict. These were the senators you could try and convince. Mike Lee is a frequent one to mention. Idaho, if you look at the Steve Daines, the Idaho guys, Wyoming's 2 senators, John Barrasso and Cynthia Loomis. Here, you could perhaps get the number 2 Senate Republican, John Thune, to try and convict, I guess. But because he did express concern over the process and how it seemed wrong. Those are the senators you can try and get. A whole bunch of the U.S. Senate are Trump defenders. Florida, Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, Alabama, Tommy Tucker was a huge Trump fan. West Virginia, so Cindy Hyde-Smith. The fact is, in this United States Senate, it just isn't possible. And we have to face it. Unfortunately, democracy isn't often possible. But that's the United States for you. Just kidding, but still. It was a sad day for democracy when the riot happened, and an even more saddening day when Trump was acquitted of all crimes. And finally, in the final impeachment vote, former United States President Donald John Trump received a vote from one more senator, Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina. Like Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, he's also retiring in 2022. He will not face voters again. The North Carolina GOP is censured him, and that just possibly paved the way for Laura Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, to take his open Senate seat. North Carolina voters are quite conservative in that way, and a recent poll by one of the major organizations saw that Laura Trump was the most likely candidate to win the primary. But Richard Burr merely made a short statement showing how he just listened to both arguments and he decided that this was the best and right thing to do as an impartial juror, and he did it. This doesn't mean much. 7 senators voting to convict the president, 10 short of what was required. It was an embarrassment to the United States of America, to the Constitution, and to the government of the United States, especially people like Josh Hawley of Missouri, Ted Cruz of Texas, and others who should have voted. In fact, all of them should have voted to have convicted the president, but others like Chuck Grassley, Rob Portman, Thom Tillis, Lindsey Graham, who Rick Scott, who all portray themselves as moderates and who try to hear everyone's perspective. Mitch McConnell, and so many others who said what the president did was wrong, but they didn't vote. They voted against convicting him because they didn't want to get in the way of his supporters, because that's how Trumpism is. But today, I want to point out to you that this was the most bipartisan impeachment in American history. 7 senators of the opposing party voted to convict. In most cases, it didn't even reach 50. I mean, the last time it went above 50, well, out of the 4 impeachments, the most recent you can think of is Mitt Romney in 2019, voting to convict the president on one charge of abuse of power. He didn't even vote to convict him on obstruction of Congress. Oh wait, that wasn't even 51 because Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski declined to do anything against the president. Yeah, you're right. That meant it was 49. So I don't even think in the first 2 impeachments that anything really happened. And that's why I personally believe that this should be a time of sadness, but also pride in some of our senators who stood up and did the right thing. But sadly, a whole bunch of these senators, the ones in yellow, who knew Trump did something wrong, they just couldn't stand up to it. Unlike the people who did, the Republicans who did. But a whole bunch of them have it easy. Not that they did the wrong thing or they took the easy path, but Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, and Senator Susan Collins of Maine. All of them just faced voters in 2020 and they're re-elected. Some by huge margins like in Louisiana and Nebraska, and Susan Collins in some closer margins, but she still beat Sarah Gideon. She was viewed like Ron Johnson in 2016. A seat that they'd given up on, and yet she won it. But they don't have to face voters again till 2026. By that time, she might even decide to retire. By that time, the Republican Party's view on things might have changed course. Bill Cassidy might decide to retire. Ben Sasse might decide to run for a higher office, perhaps governor of the state, or maybe just for the president of the United States of America in 2028. Who knows? Senator Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania, this is his last 2 years in office. He's going away in 2022, won't ever have to face the Pennsylvania GOP primary again. He can easily win the state of Pennsylvania after what he did. But his problem is the primaries, as is a whole bunch of these guys. In Nebraska and Louisiana, they both have problems with the general election too, because the states are quite conservative. But in states like Maine and Pennsylvania, where the state is actually relatively liberal, the hard part is the primaries. And in Maine, for example, the Maine GOP are meeting soon, or have already met, depending on when you're watching this video, in May, and are planning, or might have already censured Senator Susan Collins of Maine. The 2 of them that have to face votes, or what am I saying, who have to face the voters extremely soon are, in 2024, Senator Mitt Romney of Utah will face the voters. He might just decide to retire. I mean, he's quite old, he's run for president, he's been a governor of a state and a senator of another state. He was popular there for a while. After getting in Trump's way, not so much. But people still liked him. When the Utah GOP tried to censure him, the governor put a stop to it. But now there's a new governor. He might be censured. If he decides to run in the primary again, it's even that he'll lose it. There's an even odd, at least based on my research. The most competitive seat out of all these, in the primaries at least, is Senator Lisa Murkowski, Alaska. She's an independent. And she would have lost the Republican primary if they still had one. But the thing is, in Alaska, they changed the rules. Now, they just have a non-partisan primary, and if I'm not wrong, the top 2 winners advance to a general election. And if she might just garner the support of Democrats and independents. And that's what she's counting on. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are now finishing today's video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to Tane Politic. And remember, be proud of those who stood up in the face of Trump and Trump supporters and did the right thing. Remember, this is not a partisan political channel, but we do despise the actions taken by the former president when he attempted to subvert democracy, the United States government, and the 535 members of the federal government of the 535 members of the United States Congress on January 6th. Thank you.